And here we is.
Here we is.
I,
You know,
I,
I have to go ahead. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say I have to say every time that I see our little countdown, I feel like I'm about to watch an episode of 24, just because I hear the dun 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 and see it counting
Yeah,
down.
I was hoping it'd be a little bit more peppy. It's, I clicked on that thinking it was peppy, but it was not peppy. But that's okay. That's okay. It's snowing outside, so the weather inside is awfully nice. And it is Wednesday at 3 o'clock. So welcome to the DNA show. How are you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing all right. I am
Are
I am I am hanging in there on
good.
this snowy day.
Yes, yes. I just hope it doesn't get too snowy. I know some people, like, oh, we need a good snow. It's like, no, I can watch TV and I can see the folks in Michigan. That's,
Right. Right.
that's
It's not like it's rain, when someone says, "Oh, we need a good rain." It's like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense, crops and all that." But like what
yeah.
good is snow? Let's be honest here. What
I
good is snow?
I don't know. Other than it gets me outside shoveling the drive. So, which yeah. And I'm
So you're
kind of
saying I need a good motivator to go outside and do some exercise. Is that what
yeah, yeah. I've been kind of I realize if I don't go out and shovel the drive right after it snows, and if someone actually drives out, it packs it down, and then it's like almost impossible to get that part off of the drive, and it drives me crazy. I think that started when I was up north, because
Yeah.
it would actually turn to ice.
Yeah.
And there was one time that our driveway was so icy and it was on an incline that we were in the van and we could not make it up the drive. It got stuck. And this is the scariest feeling, it started going back down and we had no control at all. And it's like ever since then, it's like, oh, we got to get out there. We've got to shovel down to the drive, because if we don't, it's going to get packed down. It's going to turn to ice and we'll never get in the garage again until
Oh
spring.
man.
So
I learned earlier this week that that gravel can like freeze and be slippery as well because we have a gravel driveway. Like you've been to our house, we have a
yeah,
gravel
yeah.
driveway, and normal driveways, of course, it's going to be slick and everything when you step outside. On Sunday morning, when it was like really just really slippery and bad out, I step out of my car after returning home and I almost fall over in our gravel driveway. I'm like, I didn't know gravel like would get this slippery because
You,
you
you know
figure
what causes
broken up,
that?
but you well frozen rain.
Yeah, ice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
ice makes it a little bit slippery. Yeah.
but you would think that like it's broken up because of the gravel. At least that's what I thought, but
Yeah.
it shows what
Well,
I know.
well, we actually have a. Oh, here we go. Oh, thank you, Mildred. You see that? It's
Yeah.
essential slow soaking for agriculture. So there is a reason to want
Yes.
snow. So, well, great.
Dropping some wisdom on
I
us
know. Now I'm going to
unappreciative
feel guilty for
gentlemen.
not wanting the snow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we do have a topic today. I think it's a pretty good topic.
Yeah.
But before that, and this is just me. This I have not talked with the COVID-19 team that we have that kind of look at these things. And if you've been paying attention, I didn't look today, but the numbers in the COVID-19 numbers in Monroe County have been getting better. So they've been improving. Again, I haven't looked at it today, so I'm not sure what it is today. But the Notorious, yes, for falling on the ice. Thanks, Kimberly. Thanks for that little piece of
At least once a
history.
year.
Once a year. Okay,
At
well,
least once a year, I'd have a bad fall and hurt myself.
okay, it gives us something to look forward to. But and so I start getting excited because it's like, oh, the numbers are getting better. But there are two variables that really have me concerned. I shouldn't say really have me concerned, but have me concerned. One is the fact that the IU students aren't coming back until February 8th.
Right.
I think I was talking to you on Sunday and I said, I wish they would have brought them back earlier. So we would have had like that 2-week buffer to kind of know if that is going to be a problem or not. I think IU is trying to do a really good job of being safe.
Right.
But until they get in here and we kind of see how things are, and I hate that about COVID, because I feel like that's how I've been feeling for the past year. Well, we're just going to just have to see how things are.
Mm-hmm.
And then things change like every 2 to 3 weeks. You know, we had the election, people were out and everything. And then we had kind of a uptick, and then it started getting better. And then we had Thanksgiving. And then a couple weeks later, things started going up, and then it started getting better. And then we had Christmas and it started going up. Then we had New Year's. And so finally it's like, oh, we've had like 4 weeks without things gathering people together. Oh, wait, IU students are coming back. Well, that's great, unless it causes problems that we don't know that yet. So that's a concern. And also as concern is this variant that I keep hearing about. And it also concerns me that I watch Big Ten basketball, and they keep canceling games. And now your team, Michigan, I mean, they're not playing games right now, right?
They're not.
They're like number 15 in the nation.
Not anymore. No, they're number 4 now, my friend.
I know they are. I know they are. I figured you would jump in with that.
I'm okay if we don't play any more games right now, because right now things are looking pretty good for us.
Yeah. So in Nebraska, they haven't played for a long time, and I think Michigan State hasn't played for a long time, and it concerns me because in Michigan they found the variant and stuff, and so I get excited that it's like, oh, maybe we can get together as a congregation, and then you start hearing all this stuff. And we have had folks in our congregation that have had COVID, that have struggled through it. Some went through without any problem at all. Others struggled quite a bit. We had one who has died, but none of those contracted them because they were coming in to worship on Sunday, because we have not been meeting face to face. Right. And so, I mean, it's sad. It's sad that anybody has died from this disease. But I am just glad that we haven't been a spreader, our congregation.
Right.
You know, so I just say that to let folks know that we're still looking at things and we're still trying to move toward coming together. And, I'm confident that we will this year. Mm-hmm. I'm a little fearful making that statement, but I am confident that we will this year. The vaccine's out. I've talked to several folks that have gotten their vaccine, waiting for the second dose. And I think, that will help alleviate some things. And so I'm looking forward to that. But there's still reasons to be concerned at this point. So, that's where we are. We have talked about trying to plan an outdoor service for Easter at least.
Yeah. Because,
at this point, it seems like that would be a safe thing, doing a service outdoor, even with like a tent. We're even talking about maybe a tent. And that is
the old-fashioned Wesleyan tent meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. We can have an old faction tent revival. Yeah. And Dana, I plan on getting the vaccine. I'm not cutting line. I'm going to wait until those that are most vulnerable can have their chance. And I'm sure at some point they'll let us know when those 40, the 45 are able to, and I'll jump in then, because I'm still pretty young.
Yeah. Well, yeah, same here. I definitely plan on getting it, but I'm going to get it much later than most people probably. I'll get it with the peasant class.
Yeah.
Down in the 20 somethings.
Actually, I'll be able, for full disclosure, I'll be able to get mine before the 40 to 45 years old, because I'm not in that category. So just in case people thought, wow, you look awful for 40. You look much older than your age. No. Man. So are we ready to, oh no, it's no, Dana, it's not a personal thing. I'm no problem. I want to get the vaccine so that I can be out with folks and hopefully, once vaccine is out and the people that decide for personal reasons not to get it, they're going to have to figure out what comfort level they have getting out in public and maybe coming together and worshiping. And I get that and I understand that. For me, I want to get out and I want to feel confident that I'm not going to contract anything. Although I do know that the vaccine just means that you won't get as sick. And so you still need to take precautions and, but I know everyone has their reasons and that's fine. And people need to do what they feel most comfortable with. But my goal is that we would gather together because it's so helpful. It's even more than helpful. God created us to be social. He created us to want to be in relationship with other folks, and this virus has really kind of cut into that ability. So I'm looking forward to when we can get back together and really care for one another like God has called us to care for one another.
Ditto.
So do we have any other like announcement type stuff before we jump into kind of an actual topic today?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay.
I think that's about it.
Okay. Well, here's the topic. And if we went on stpaul.life and went to, I think I did it in the conversations area, you would know what we're going to talk about today. Because I've been doing sermon series on Esther, talking about Esther's story. And, Esther basically, she was the queen and her story was, I'm a queen. And, she felt she was safe and she told herself a lot of things about who she was at the time and the story in which she found herself. And then Mordecai came in and basically invited her to live into a different story, one where she wasn't just the queen, but also a rescuer of her people. And it was a big story. And really my only point was to be open to the story that God is calling you to be a part of. And sometimes we get the feeling that if we're not part of a big story, that we're not being faithful to God. And so we go out looking for these big stories and it's like, well, that's not a very big story. But here's the thing. God doesn't always call us to what we think is a big story.
Right. Yeah. I can remember, being a youth and going to like mission trips and things like that, and hearing the missionaries we were working with. They would sort of do their testimonies each night. Each person on the team would do their own testimony, and I would listen to their testimonies, and I'd be like, well, that's amazing. Like most of them, like they have like these big stories of like, well, I got really into drugs and things like that, and Jesus saved me and all that, and going through that. And I remember when I first came into ministry, being like, am I said enough to do? Am I good enough to do this? Because is my story really good enough? In the sense that like, because I had a relatively normal, at least normal enough to me, life to that point was
except for the whole ice slipping thing. But other than that, pretty normal.
Yeah. Other than that, I had a normal enough life that I was like, is my story strong enough for me to actually minister to anyone? And so I think, that plays a big part of it, is like our own personal testimonies. Does something bad have to have happened to us or anything like that in order for us to have a quote big enough story for God to have played into and for God to show up, really?
Yeah. And you mentioned going in the ministry, and it's not just those going in the ministry, but I think it happens. We get very tempted to chase after sometimes a story that God isn't calling us into. Because we look around and it's like, oh, I'm just this, or I'm just that. And it's like, I need to be like this pastor over here that's pastoring a 10,000 person church. And we spend all this time and energy and effort chasing, or should I say, pursuing after that story, when God has called us to look around and see the story where he is placing us. And Mary, that's exactly right. Little things can be a big thing to someone.
Right.
And I think in one of the churches I served, I just happened to have a thought about this. There was an older woman. She was probably, I think, in her 80s, and she had been teaching the first and second graders. No, the third and fourth graders for decades. And all of the kids that basically went through that church would look back and say, oh, she was so instrumental in my life, and she just did so much and everything. And some people might say, oh, a Sunday school teacher? That's not that big of a story. But it was. It was. In fact, she was she continued that role until my son got to be in the third grade, and him and his friend, and she's like, I can't do this anymore. they were
those pastor kids will do you in, man.
I know. I felt so bad, but it's like, but my youth group leader, I've talked about her before on Sunday, and she wasn't a Bible scholar. She was just someone who was willing to take on the youth group when no one else was. And there were at least two, I think, that came into the ministry because of her influence in their life. There might have been more. And again, she was not perfect by any means, but you know what? She was faithful, and she actually lived into a much bigger story because she actually influenced those who would go on and influence others, who would go on and influence others. And so sometimes the story you're called to be in is more looking down the road and seeing that when you're faithful to the story that God's calling you into, you have much more influence and impact than what you ever thought possible.
Absolutely. It's one of those things that, they say, be faithful in the small things.
Yeah.
And more things will come.
Yeah. And so the important thing isn't the bigness of your story. The important thing is that you are open to the story that God is calling you into. And sometimes it just begins by stepping back and saying, okay, I recognize that the story's not about me. I've tried to make it about me for a long time, but it's not about me. And then step back and say, God, what are you wanting me to do in the place that I find myself? I think that was Mordecai's message to Esther. It's just the fact that she happened to be queen. She happened to be in that position, but you are in a position to as well. Whoever's listening to this, maybe you're a parent, maybe you're a coworker somewhere, maybe you have responsibility, maybe you don't. But God continues to call us to be instruments and agents of his kingdom, which means praying, thy will be done in my life, as it's done in heaven. So you don't have to be a queen. You don't have to be a king. You don't have to be a pastor of a huge church, because it's amazing what God can do with you and through you when you hand over your story to him. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was important to share because, we're talking about Esther. Sometimes you talk about, these just giant faith people in the Bible. I'll never be a Peter or a Paul. I'm not going to write 2/3 of the New Testament.
Right. And Esther and Mordecai are not perfect either. We'll get into that a little bit on Sunday, but yeah.
Yeah. So live the story that God's calling you into. I think he's calling all of you guys, no matter who you are, into a story. It just means looking around and say, God, help me to look around with your eyes.
Amen.
Yeah. So Aaron,
David,
lean into his story, which I know you already are.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So, let me ask you as we're getting ready to close, what's been your experience of trying to follow that path that God's placed you on? What do you find most helpful in doing that? I'm putting you on the spot. We do not talk about this beforehand.
Yeah, no. It really is just paying attention to the little things, paying attention to how God is moving in our everyday lives, our everyday situations. Most of the time, we're not paying attention to really look for that.
It's true.
I've been fortunate enough that throughout my own development over the past couple of years, I've had a group of people that we get together and we talk about, well, how have you seen God at work in your
Oh,
life?
great question.
Um, and when you think about that, you think about trying to answer that every single week. You really have to pay attention and to look at where God is showing up, and it makes you more grateful for basically everything. You can, it increases your gratitude. Uh, just to have a meal to eat, to have friends to talk to have a roof over your head and all that. God shows up even in those ways. Um, but just seeing how God is moving in every single portion of your life. I mean, I've shared with you recently that God can move in a situation where you're getting your hair cut. I'm not going to go too
Yeah.
deep into that
Yeah.
here, but the everyday coming and going of life. God can really speak into, and if we pay attention to it and listen, I think God can really transform everyday mundane moments into something transformational.
Yeah, that's so true. So I want to put a challenge out there. You caused me to think of a challenge. So if you don't like the challenge, you can send email to Aaron at stpaulbloomington.org and say, thanks a lot, guy. No, the challenge is to find someone else and get with them and say, hey, can we touch base, every week, every couple of weeks, just simply to ask the question, where have you seen God moving?
Mm.
And at first, you might get together and say, I don't know if I have. But what happens is when you know the question's coming, as Aaron said, you start looking and then you start noticing and then you start getting excited because it's like, oh my goodness, God is moving and I never knew it.
Hmm.
So just have an agreement, just say, I'll talk, and you can even put a time, I'll talk for 5 minutes. You can time it, especially if you have problems, ending, you can set it for time. And then you give the other person 5 minutes and then you can discuss, other things later. But it's amazing the story that God calls us to when we are paying attention. I like that.
Right.
Well, Aaron, thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
Don't fall on the ice. And if you
Yeah.
do, don't hurt yourself. You don't
I'll
want
do
that.
my best. I
Okay.
will do my best.
Yeah. Well, we will see everyone later. Hope you're having a great day and a great week, and lean in to the story God's calling you into. Blessings.
Amen.